Let's talk about these various immigration policies that are on the cards. Harjap Singh Bhangal is a UK immigration lawyer and joins us once again here on the show. Good morning to you, Harjap.
Morning, Julia.
Thanks so much for joining us. First of all, what do you make of what Nigel Farage has pledged? He's pledged that he wants zero net migration. Now, bearing in mind that net migration was basically 750,000 last year, that'll probably be go up. I mean, but we have a lot of people who leave the country. So even if we have people who leave the country, we're still looking at 600,000 more people coming into the country under zero net migration, aren't we?
Well, I think Reform's whole stance has always been one in, one out. So what they're saying is, right, if one person goes, then we'll let one in. However, if you do introduce zero net migration immediately, what are you going to do with businesses in the care sector? And I think that remains unexplained. There's a big hope on the fact that British people are going to do these jobs which migrants do and which employers are calling migrants over to do. And that hasn't happened so far.
But again, we're often told in the NHS and in the social care sector, those migrants doing those jobs. But actually, that is much more an issue in the southeast of the country. We have a larger migrant population. When it comes to, say, care sector and the NHS in further north of the country, that's not the case. They still manage to get staff.
Well, traditionally, migrants actually live with their parents. I still live with mine, so I'm not wrong to talk, and I'm born here. And a lot of people do live with their parents, but we've got to realise that often care homes...
Now, what's that got to do with anything? I'm talking about people working as carers.
Yeah, this is what we're talking about. The fact is, if you talk about people working in this sector, the migrant sector is propping up the care sector.
I'm saying that's largely a southeast thing. Everyone's obsessed with this. That's not the case in large parts of the country.
I think you'll find it is the case in places like Birmingham, Manchester, Leicester, Derby, Coventry, Nottingham. They're not south. So if you're looking at, all right, in Scotland or Newcastle, but the fact is, if you look at the Midlands, which is definitely not the south, any Midland will tell you that is the case, that migrants are needed to do these jobs and British people aren't doing it.
Well, okay. I mean, the Lib Dems have proposed, and we raised the minimum wage minimum wage for social care being £2 above, so people aren't saying I'll stack shelves in Tesco rather than because I can earn more as a care worker. But I mean, the argument surely would be we've got enough people in this country who can do that work. We just want them to do the work.
Well, that's the idea. The idea is none of the parties, except for we've heard all the rhetoric from all the parties before. British jobs for British people. The fact is, how do you get the British people to do these lowly paid jobs?
Well, my view has always been when they're hungry enough, they'll do them. But let's talk about this thing. It's not just about care workers, is it? We're not letting in 1.2 million care workers every year. They're a substantial number. It's over 100,000. But we're not looking at and people obviously stay for a long time. So we're not. It's new people every day who are coming. When we look at net zero migration, that still might not necessarily economically be a benefit to this country, surely, because if we're losing, say, a highly paid, highly skilled graduate who's a doctor or an engineer who's going abroad to live, and we're replacing that with somebody who's got no qualifications, who's working in a minimum wage job, that's not an economic boon to us, is it?
No, and that's the problem, and that's been the whole problem the whole way. That's where Reform has failed to sort of say, well, how are you going to replace these doctors? We know a large number of doctors go abroad. We know a large number of nurses, once they qualify, they go to Australia because they're better paid. Once again, the Lib Dems might have hit the nail on the head there, or let's increase the minimum wage. But how much are you going to increase it by? You've got to make these jobs attractive. And then by increasing minimum wage, you're going up against British businesses who don't want to pay more and they can't afford to pay more. So are you actually hurting?
We're always told that. It's like we can't get British workers to do things like picking the fruit and veg. And I realise seasonal work, again, that's particularly difficult. There are people who actually just literally travel from Eastern Europe, do seasonal work in one country, then seasonal work in another country. And a lot of British people say they don't want to do that work. Again,
why don't they want to do that work, Julian?
Why? They say, it's backbreaking and it doesn't pay as well. Although I understand it doesn't pay anything like minimum wage, it's actually rather well paid. But this is the thing. If you're young and you haven't got another job, I don't see why you should get the choice. Sorry, I just don't. I really don't. But the point is, we expect to pay a certain price for certain things, and we expect, therefore, employers to pay, low wages. And, well, if those jobs can't be done by people living in this country and have to get people from abroad, we're actually paying a cost to have all those people come here because we have to provide housing and social care and
how about bartenders, waitresses, Uber drivers?
We don't need to take anyone from abroad to do those jobs.
Listen, them jobs are not backbreaking. So why don't the British people do those jobs? What about cab drivers? What about security guards?
No.
What about people that are security staff?
I don't know. Are we all lazy? I don't know. But I mean, there are an awful lot of people who would rather live on benefits.
Incentivize people to.
The incentive is you can't get benefits.
Take the jobs up. You can't get the workers. And this is the problem. We need to consult the businesses. We don't need to punish businesses. That's a given. We don't need to punish British people who are going to marry abroad to bring their spouse over.
I agree
with you. Which is what they're talking about. That's not the solution. So punishing the care sector isn't a solution either, and punishing our elderly isn't the solution either. So we need a policy in place where businesses are consulted. Caps don't work. They've tried them before under Theresa May and David Cameron. We've heard this before.
Well, you were told caps don't work. Caps don't work because they're never applied, because there's always another exemption, which is whatever business says we can't get chefs to work in Indian restaurants. Oh, we'll have an exemption for that, as if we can't train people up in our own country to work in restaurants. I mean, goodness me. But this is the thing.
Well, we can't train cab drivers. I think an Indian chef is way off the mark. Yeah. So if you can't train someone to drive a car,
well, we can't we? People just choose not to do it.
Why haven't we?
Here's the thing. I don't think it's the job of the British state to train people to drive cars. I think it is the job of the British state not to hand out my hard-earned taxes and everyone else who's listening and watching's hard-earned taxes to people who are able-bodied who could get a job tomorrow if they so choose.
The job of the British state is to get a job filled and to make sure that the state continues running, not to block sectors and say, you can't call this, but we've got no replacement for you. Or you might have to train a person up 10 days, or he might only be allowed to...
But how terrible. Businesses asked to contribute by actually training up the staff they employ. What an awful thing to ask.
Or find a staff that doesn't say, oh, well, I can't work more than my 20 hours because it affects my benefits.
But again, that's up to the government, isn't it? And I know people do that. People I know work in the benefits office.
And the government have to provide immediate solutions. They haven't got
here's the immediate solution. If you have to take the full paid job, there are plenty of full paid jobs in your area and you need to take a full paid job. Right, here's the thing. I want to come back to you though. Tory policy, they're talking about a cap, but they're talking about not a specific number. We haven't had a number from the Labour Party either. They've said they would cut net migration numbers. They say significantly, but not giving us a number. But the Tories are saying their annual cap, it will be voted on by Parliament, but based on the advice and evidence from migration experts. We know they're just going to say, but we need people in social care, we need in the NHS, we need people to pick fruit, we need students, the university sector will collapse. We'll be on the same numbers, won't we?
Well, with caps, like I said, caps don't work, whether they've got numbers.
Of course a cap works if you apply a cap.
No, a cap does not work.
Why not?
Because what you get is a sector saying, actually, we need more. So what happens is if you say there's 100,000 vacancies in care, we can't even fill those with migrants and with what we've got domestically. If we put a cap on those, then how are we going to explain the jobs that don't get filled? They're
going to have to put their wages up, aren't they? That's one of the issues I've always had with massive uncontrolled immigration, which is that it actually pushes down wages, but particularly for those on the lowest incomes.
Well, the fact is you have to find people to work in.
Yeah, so you have to pay them more.
Yeah, and if you pay them more, then you hurt an already underfunded sector. Now that means who pays for the care sector? Local authorities and the government. Yeah. So that means we have to put taxes up. And me and you are going to have to pay more.
We're already paying for it because we're paying for the people who come in who are also getting extra benefit, their child benefit. They're getting all the other extra benefits to fund their low income. They're not paying for themselves on minimum wage.
Migrants don't get benefits.
We're subsidising minimum wage workers.
Well, what happens is we are going to end up paying regardless. Now, would you want to pay your taxes go up and the actual work gets done, or your taxes go up and no work gets done at all?
I think we need a long-term solution, and that long-term solution can't be we just import everybody. We just import the entire rest of the world to do our jobs.
Nobody is saying that.
They are.
What we're saying, what they should be saying is we will listen to the various sectors where there's immediate vacancies. We will fill their vacancies alongside, as long as the employer and the sector promises or undertakes that for every migrant they employ, then they will train at least one.
They promise with pretty please and honey on top, because so it's a pinky promise, so we knew they'll do it. Of course they won't. They can get cheaper foreign workers.
How are you going to enforce a cap then on people? Exactly.
Here's how you enforce a cap. You only have a certain number of visas that you give out. The government apparently is surprised every year. Oh, look, all these people have come in. Well, how did that happen? They handed out visas to them. That's how they came in.
And how are you going to do that across the needs of the nation? Are you going to do a survey on every single company? What happens if one company falls?
They already do surveys of different sectors.
And despite that, there's still vacancies. We can't.
So it's almost like that's not the solution. Then
we have got pub landlords here closing their pubs because they can't get the staff. Pub landlords can't get a staff.
Because we have a benefit system that allows people to not work who are able-bodied and could work.
And in order to...
And also we shut down the economy so no one's in the pub.
To make sure the economy isn't shut down, migrant workers are needed. We need these migrant workers. Fill the gaps and then train your own. You're supposed to be training your own.
Because we have Harjap, we're going to have to leave it here. But because we have been using migrant workers to fill the gaps, all credit to the migrant workers coming to make a new life for themselves and work hard. All credit to them. I've got nothing but respect for them. But at the end of the day, nothing is going to force businesses to train up British people, and nothing's going to force people who are layabouts on benefits to go to work until they have to.